Amid the fast pace of 21st century life, people are constantly chasing happiness, whether in careers, material possessions, or fleeting moments of joy. Yet many come to realize that happiness is fragile, easily shaken by life's inevitable ups and downs. So where can we find a foundation strong enough to offer lasting peace and inner strength? For over 2,500 years, Buddhism has offered humanity a clear path not to escape reality, but to live fully in each moment of it. Faith in Buddhism is not just belief in the Buddha's words, it's a commitment to living with wisdom and compassion. It's a trust that is tested and proven through personal experience, rather than blind acceptance. When we have faith in the law of cause and effect, we understand that every action carries consequences and that we ourselves are responsible for shaping our lives. When we believe in impermanence, we learn to release unnecessary attachments and open our hearts to change. When we trust the path of practice, ethical living, mental discipline, and the cultivation of insight, we discover the strength to rise above suffering and face challenges with calm clarity. This kind of faith does not promise a life without hardship. Instead, it transforms hardship into an opportunity for growth. It gives us eyes clear enough to see the true nature of all things, and a heart warm enough to love without conditions. For Americans and anyone living in a competitive, high-pressure society, faith in Buddhism can be like a lighthouse in the storm, reminding us that peace doesn't come from controlling everything, but from the ability to let go and trust the path to awakening. Faith in Buddhism, known in Pali as sad, is a quality that stands apart from the way faith is often understood in other traditions. It is not blind obedience, nor is it a superstition built on fear of the unknown. Instead, it is a deep, steady trust that arises from personal insight, reflection, and direct experience. The Buddha himself urged his followers to question everything, even his own words, until they could confirm the truth for themselves. In the Kalama Sutta, he advised, "Do not believe something simply because it's a tradition, or because a teacher said it, or because it has been passed down through generations. Believe it only after you have examined it, practiced it, and seen with your own eyes that it leads to peace, wisdom, and freedom from suffering." In this sense, faith in Buddhism is not a starting point of surrender, but the fruit of personal verification. Imagine standing before a bridge that spans a powerful, rushing river. You step onto it not because you've been told to, but because you trust through observing its strength that it will carry your weight. Faith in Buddhism works in the same way. It is the bridge that helps you move from confusion and fear toward clarity and liberation. Without it, you might hesitate at the riverbank, trapped in indecision. With it, you find the courage to take the first step. This faith is different from superstition in a profound way. Superstition often feeds on fear, uncertainty, and the hope of manipulating unseen forces for personal gain. Buddhist faith, however, rests on an understanding of natural laws that apply to everyone, everywhere, regardless of belief. There is the law of cause and effect, or karma, the recognition that every action has consequences, shaping not just our future, but the quality of our mind in the present. There is the law of impermanence, the acceptance that all things change, and nothing, joy or sorrow, gain or loss, lasts forever. And there is the insight of non-self, that what we call I is not a fixed, unchanging entity, but a dynamic interplay of body, mind, and experiences. These insights are not abstract ideas. They are truths that can be observed in our own lives. Trusting them changes the way we live. Faith is what inspires us to put these truths into action. It is the quiet but powerful force that keeps us practicing, especially on the days when it feels difficult. Life is full of moments when the mind feels restless, when work or family problems weigh heavily, when progress seems invisible. It's easy to skip meditation, abandon mindfulness, or close our hearts in such times. But faith born from past glimpses of peace and understanding reminds us that every mindful breath, every act of kindness, every moment of restraint plants a seed in the garden of the heart. Even if we cannot see the tree yet, the seed is there, and faith keeps us tending to it. One of the most transformative aspects of this kind of faith is the inner stability it brings. The external world is in constant motion. Economies boom and crash. Political landscapes shift. Relationships evolve. Health changes. Seasons turn. If our sense of peace depends entirely on these shifting conditions, we will live like a boat, tossed in a storm, sometimes riding high, sometimes sinking low. Faith in the Dharma provides a different anchor. It doesn't stop the winds or calm the sea, but it roots us in a deeper stillness that remains unshaken by surface changes. In Western cultures, faith is often seen as being in conflict with reason, as if belief requires abandoning critical thinking. In Buddhism, the two are partners. Faith gives us the courage to start walking the path. Reason and wisdom ensure we stay on the right course. This is a cyclical relationship. The more we practice and gain direct experience, the stronger our confidence becomes. The stronger the confidence, the more deeply we practice. Neither faith nor wisdom thrives alone together. They build a balanced mind. Consider the story of a young professional in New York City, overwhelmed by the relentless pace of corporate life. Long hours, constant digital noise, and the pressure to achieve left him anxious and exhausted. Out of curiosity, he attended a weekend mindfulness retreat. At first, he resisted, skeptical of the silence, fidgeting through meditation sessions, but something shifted by the second day. His thoughts slowed, his breath deepened, and for the first time in months, he felt calm. That weekend did not solve all his problems, but it gave him a direct experience of relief. That experience became the seed of faith, not because someone told him it would help, but because he felt the truth of it in his own body and mind. From there, faith encouraged him to keep practicing daily, even when work and life became hectic. Again, faith also reshapes the way we face crisis. When loss or hardship strikes, the first question many people ask is, why is this happening to me? With faith in karma, that question begins to change, not into self-blame, but into what can I do now to plant better seeds? The focus shifts from dwelling on causes we cannot change to creating conditions for a better future. Likewise, faith in impermanence softens the edge of despair. We know that nothing, even pain, lasts forever. In societies like the United States, where competition, speed, and measurable success are often emphasized, Buddhist faith offers a refreshing counterpoint. It does not demand that you renounce modern life or withdraw from society. Rather, it invites you to participate fully, but with a steadier mind, less dependent on the highs and lows of external validation. You can still pursue goals, build relationships, and create, but you learn to do so without losing your center when things don't go as planned. Perhaps one of the most beautiful qualities of faith in Buddhism is its inclusivity. You do not have to be born into a particular culture, speak a certain language, or have a specific past to step onto the path. Whether you're a student in Boston, a farmer in Kansas, or a retiree in California, the principles of compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom are there for you. Faith is the ticket to begin the journey, but it's a ticket anyone can claim. And so, when we talk about faith in Buddhism, we are talking about much more than belief in a doctrine. We are talking about a living trust in the possibility of transformation. It's the knowledge, earned through experience, that the mind can be trained, the heart can be softened, and suffering can be lessened. It doesn't promise to remove all storms from your life, but it equips you with a vessel strong enough to navigate them. It doesn't guarantee constant happiness, but it opens the door to a peace that endures beyond the rise and fall of circumstances. For those in the modern world, especially in places where life moves fast and expectations run high, this kind of faith can feel like finding solid ground in the middle of a storm. It's the quiet voice within that says, keep going. This path is worth walking. And over time, that voice becomes more than encouragement. It becomes proof that faith in Buddhism doesn't just transform beliefs, it transforms lives. The roots of transformation doesn't begin with dramatic gestures or overnight miracles. In Buddhism, it begins quietly with a shift in perception, a moment of clarity, a seed of trust. Faith in the Dharma is not just a belief. In teachings, it's a living relationship with a path that invites us to change from the inside out. And that change, though subtle at first, becomes the foundation for a life that feels more awake, more compassionate, and more free. At the heart of Buddhist transformation is the understanding that suffering is not a punishment, but a teacher. The first noble truth doesn't shy away from the reality of pain. It names, it honors it, and invites us to look directly at it. This is where faith begins to take root. Instead of running from discomfort, we learn to sit with it, breathe through it, and ask what it's trying to show us. That willingness to face suffering is itself an act of courage, and it's fueled by the trust that something meaningful lies on the other side. Faith also transforms our relationship with impermanence. In everyday life, we often resist change. We cling to what feels good, and we push away what feels bad. But Buddhism teaches that everything, joy, sorrow, success, failure, is in constant motion. When we begin to trust this truth, we stop fighting the flow of life. We learn to ride its waves with grace. Faith helps us loosen our grip, not because we're giving up, but because we're waking up to the reality that clinging only creates more suffering. In that release, we find a deeper kind of peace. One of the most powerful roots of transformation is the shift from reaction to response. Most of us live on autopilot, reacting to stress, criticism, or fear with old habits and conditioned patterns. But faith in the Dharma invites us to pause. It reminds us that we have a choice. We can respond with mindfulness instead of impulse, with compassion instead of defensiveness. This shift doesn't happen all at once. It's cultivated through practice, through meditation, ethical living, and reflection. And each time we choose awareness over reactivity, we reinforce the trust that change is possible. Faith also transforms how we see ourselves. In a world that often defines worth by achievement, appearance, or status, Buddhism offers a radical reframe. You are not your thoughts, your emotions, or your resume. You are a dynamic, unfolding process, not a fixed identity. This insight can be unsettling at first, but with faith, it becomes liberating. We stop trying to be someone and start learning how to be. We stop chasing perfection and start embracing presence. Faith gives us permission to let go of the masks and meet ourselves with honesty and kindness. This inner transformation naturally extends outward. As we begin to soften toward ourselves, we also soften toward others. We start to see that everyone is carrying their own burdens, their own fears, their own longing to be free. Faith in the Dharma nurtures empathy not as a moral obligation, but as a natural expression of wisdom. We begin to listen more deeply, judge less harshly, and connect more authentically. Relationships become less about control and more about care. Conflicts become opportunities for understanding. And even in moments of tension, we find ourselves asking, what would compassion look like here? Transformation also shows up in how we relate to time. In modern life, we're often racing, chasing deadlines, multitasking, planning the next thing before the current moment is even complete. But Buddhist faith invites us to slow down. It teaches that the present moment is not a stepping stone to somewhere else. It is the path itself. When we trust that truth, we begin to live differently. We savor our meals. We breathe more fully. We listen without rushing to reply. Life becomes less about getting somewhere and more about being here. For many people, especially in Western cultures, this shift can feel like a homecoming. In societies that prize productivity and performance, the Dharma offers a counterbalanced reminder that our value is not in how much we do, but in how deeply we live. Faith in this path doesn't require us to abandon our goals or dreams. It simply asks us to pursue them with awareness, integrity, and heart. It's not about renouncing the world, it's about engaging with it more wisely. Transformation also means learning to hold paradox. Buddhism doesn't offer easy answers or rigid dogma. It invites us into mystery. It teaches that life is both beautiful and painful, that joy and sorrow often walk hand in hand. Faith helps us hold these truths without collapsing into despair or denial. It gives us the strength to stay open, to feel deeply without being overwhelmed, to care fiercely without burning out. In this way, faith becomes a kind of spiritual resilience. It doesn't shield us from life, it equips us to meet it fully. And perhaps most importantly, faith transforms our sense of possibility. It reminds us that no matter how stuck we feel, no matter how many mistakes we've made, no matter how heavy the past may be, we can begin again. The Dharma is not reserved for saints or sages. It's for anyone willing to show up, to practice, to trust. Faith says, you are not broken, you are becoming. That message, repeated gently over time, begins to reshape our entire worldview. We start to see that transformation isn't about becoming someone else, it's about becoming more fully ourselves. It's about peeling away the layers of fear, shame, and illusion to reveal the clarity, compassion, and courage that were always there. Faith in Buddhism doesn't promise perfection. It promises presence. It doesn't offer escape. It offers engagement, and in that engagement, we discover a life that feels more real, more connected, and more free. So when we talk about the roots of transformation in Buddhism, we're talking about a process that begins with trust. Trust in the teachings, trust in the practice, trust in our own capacity to grow. That trust becomes the soil in which wisdom and compassion take root. And over time, those roots grow strong enough to support a life of deep meaning, quiet joy, and enduring peace. Embracing impermanence. One of the most profound shifts that faith in Buddhism brings is the ability to embrace impermanence not just as an idea, but as a lived truth. Impermanence, or anicca, is the understanding that everything in life is constantly changing. Nothing, no emotion, no relationship, no success or failure remains fixed. And while this truth can feel unsettling at first, it is also the key to freedom. When we stop resisting change and start trusting its flow, we begin to live with greater ease, clarity, and compassion. In the modern world, especially in Western cultures, permanence is often idealized. We're taught to seek stability, to build things that last, to hold on to what we love, and avoid what we fear. We chase careers that promise long-term security, relationships that feel unbreakable, and identities that seem solid. But life doesn't work that way. Jobs change, people change, our bodies age, our emotions shift. And when we cling to the illusion of permanence, we suffer not because change is cruel, but because we're trying to hold on to something that's already moving. Faith in impermanence doesn't mean giving up or becoming passive. It means learning to dance with life rather than fight against it. It means trusting that every moment is fresh, every experience is unfolding, and every ending carries the seed of a new beginning. This kind of trust transforms how we respond to loss, disappointment, and uncertainty. Instead of asking, "How do I stop this from changing?" we begin to ask, "How can I meet this change with grace?" Consider the way we experience emotions. Joy, sadness, anger, excitement, all rise and fall like waves. When we're caught in a painful emotion, it can feel endless. But faith in impermanence reminds us, this too will pass. The storm will settle, the mind will clear. And when we're clinging to a moment of happiness, trying to make it last forever, impermanence gently whispers, enjoy it fully, but don't hold too tightly. Let it come, let it go. That's the rhythm of life. This perspective is especially powerful in times of grief. When we lose someone we love, the pain can feel unbearable. But Buddhism doesn't ask us to suppress that pain. It invites us to honor it, to feel it deeply, and to understand that even grief evolves. It changes shape, it softens, it teaches. Faith in impermanence doesn't erase the ache, but it offers a wider lens, one that sees loss not as a final blow, but as part of the natural unfolding of existence. And in that view, healing becomes possible. Impermanence also transforms how we relate to success and failure. In a culture that often defines worth by achievement, it's easy to become attached to outcomes. We want our efforts to pay off, our goals to be reached, our plans to unfold perfectly. But life rarely follows a straight line. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we stumble, sometimes what we thought we wanted no longer fits. Faith in impermanence helps us stay grounded through it all. It reminds us that no moment defines us, and no setback is permanent. We can begin again. We can grow. We can let go of what no longer serves, and step into what's next. This kind of trust also deepens our relationships. When we accept that people change, that their moods shift, their needs evolve, their paths diverge, we stop trying to control them. We start listening more, loving more freely, letting others be who they are, moment to moment. Faith in impermanence doesn't make relationships less meaningful, it makes them more precious, because we know they won't last forever. We show up more fully, we say what matters, we forgive faster, we cherish the time we have. Even our sense of self is transformed by this truth. Most of us carry a fixed idea of who we are based on our past, our personality, our roles. But Buddhism teaches that the self is not a static thing. It's a process, a flow, a collection of changing thoughts, feelings, and experiences. When we trust that, we stop clinging to old stories. We allow ourselves to evolve, to shed what no longer fits, to grow into new versions of ourselves. Faith in impermanence becomes a kind of permission to change, to heal, to become in daily life. This trust shows up in small but powerful ways. We stop rushing, we savor our meals, we listen without interrupting. We notice the sky, the breath, the quiet moments between tasks. We stop trying to freeze time and start living inside it. And in doing so, we discover a richness that was always there, hidden beneath our resistance to change. For someone living in a fast-paced, achievement-driven society, this shift can be revolutionary. It's not about abandoning ambition or goals. It's about holding them lightly, pursuing them with heart, but not letting them define our worth. It's about knowing that even if things don't go as planned, we are still whole, still growing, still part of the great unfolding. Faith in impermanence also brings humility. It reminds us that we are part of something vast and mysterious, that we don't control everything, that life is bigger than our plans, and in that humility, we find peace. We stop trying to force outcomes and start trusting the process. We learn to say, I don't know what's coming, but I trust I can meet it. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And perhaps most beautifully, impermanence teaches us to love more deeply, because we know everything is passing. We stop taking things for granted. We appreciate the people in our lives, the beauty of a sunset, the sound of laughter, the quiet moments. We stop waiting for the perfect time and start living now. Faith in impermanence doesn't make life sad, it makes it sacred. So when we talk about transformation through Buddhist faith, impermanence is one of its most powerful roots. It changes how we see the world, how we relate to others, and how we understand ourselves. It doesn't ask us to deny, change it asks us to trust it, to move with it, to find freedom in its flow, and in that trust, something beautiful happens. We stop clinging, we stop fearing, we start living, fully, freely, moment by moment. The power of compassion and wisdom. If impermanence teaches us to let go, then compassion teaches us how to hold. And if mindfulness shows us how to observe, then wisdom shows us how to understand. In Buddhism, faith is not just a doorway to peace, a path that leads us directly into the heart of compassion and the clarity of wisdom. These two qualities are not abstract ideals. They are living forces that shape how we see ourselves, how we treat others, and how we respond to the world around us. Compassion, or karu, is often misunderstood as mere kindness or sympathy. But in Buddhist practice, compassion is much deeper. It's the ability to feel the suffering of others as if it were your own, and to respond with a sincere wish to alleviate it. It's not pity, it's not obligation. It's a natural response that arises when the boundaries between me and you begin to soften. And faith in the Dharma nurtures this response not by telling us to be good people, but by helping us see clearly that all beings are interconnected, all beings suffer, and all beings long to be free. When we trust this truth, compassion becomes effortless. We stop asking, do they deserve my help? And start asking, how can I ease their pain? We stop judging others by their behavior and start understanding the conditions that shape them. We begin to see that behind every harsh word, every selfish act, every moment of cruelty, there is confusion, fear, or unmet need. And instead of reacting with anger or resentment, we respond with care. That doesn't mean we become passive or allow harm to continue. It means we act from a place of strength, not the strength of control, but the strength of love. This kind of compassion also turns inward. Many people struggle with self-judgment, shame, and the feeling of not being enough. In a culture that constantly measures worth by productivity, appearance, or success, it's easy to feel like we're falling short. But Buddhist faith reminds us that suffering is not a personal failure, it's part of being human. And when we truly understand that, we begin to treat ourselves with the same tenderness we offer to others. We forgive ourselves, we encourage ourselves, we hold space for our own healing. This is not selfishness, it's the foundation of genuine compassion. Because when we care for ourselves, we become more capable of caring for others. Wisdom, or Panbi, is the companion of compassion. If compassion is the heart of Buddhism, wisdom is its eyes. It's the ability to see things as they truly aren't, through the lens of desire, fear, or habit, but through the clarity of insight. Wisdom doesn't mean knowing everything. It means understanding the nature of reality, that all things are impermanent, that suffering arises from attachment, and that freedom comes from letting go. These truths are not just philosophical, they are practical. They guide our choices, shape our relationships, and influence how we navigate life's challenges. Faith in the Dharma strengthens wisdom by encouraging us to look deeper. Instead of reacting to surface appearances, we begin to ask, what's really happening here? What's driving this emotion? What's underneath this conflict? We start to see patterns not just in others, but in ourselves. We notice how craving leads to restlessness, how aversion leads to tension, how ignorance leads to confusion. And with that awareness, we begin to make different choices. We pause before speaking. We reflect before acting. We listen more than we judge. Wisdom doesn't make life perfect, but it makes it clearer, more spacious, more free. Together, compassion and wisdom create a balance that is rare and powerful. Compassion without wisdom can become enabling or exhausting. Wisdom without compassion can become cold or detached. But when they work together, they create a way of being that is both tender and strong. We become people who can hold pain without being overwhelmed, who can speak truth without causing harm, who can love without losing ourselves. This balance is especially important in today's world, with so much division, conflict, and noise. It's easy to become reactive, cynical, or numb. But faith in Buddhism offers another way. It invites us to stay open, to feel deeply, think clearly, and act skillfully. It teaches us that we don't have to choose between caring and clarity. We can have both. We can be both. Consider a moment of conflict, maybe with a colleague, a family member, or even a stranger. The instinct might be to defend, attack, or withdraw. But with compassion and wisdom, we pause. We ask, what is this person feeling? What am I feeling? What's the most skillful way to respond? That pause changes everything. It creates space for understanding, for healing, for connection. And even if the conflict isn't resolved, we walk away with integrity, knowing we acted from our deepest values. This way of living doesn't come from memorizing teachings or reciting mantras. It comes from practice, from showing up, again and again, with faith in the path, from trusting that each moment of mindfulness, each act of kindness, each insight into our own mind is part of a larger transformation. And over time, that transformation becomes visible not just in how we feel, but in how we live. We become more patient, more present, more grounded. We stop chasing perfection and start embracing process. We stop needing to be right and start wanting to understand. We stop fearing change and start trusting growth. And in that shift, life becomes less of a struggle and more of a journey. For people living in fast-paced, high-pressure environments, whether in Vietnam, the United States, or anywhere else, this transformation is not just helpful, it's essential. Compassion and wisdom are not luxuries, they are survival tools. They help us stay human in a world that often forgets what it means to be human. They help us stay connected in a world that often pulls us apart. And they help us stay awake in a world that often numbs us with distraction. So when we talk about the power of Buddhist faith, we're talking about its ability to awaken these qualities within us, not as distant ideals, but as living truths. Truths that guide how we speak, how we listen, how we love, and how we live. Compassion and wisdom are not things we acquire, they are things we uncover. And faith is the key that unlocks them. Living freely in a busy world, in today's world, the pace of life can feel relentless. We wake up to notifications, rush through routines, juggle deadlines, and fall asleep with a mind still racing. The pressure to perform, to succeed, to stay ahead is constant and often exhausting. In this environment, the idea of living freely can seem out of reach, like a luxury reserved for monks or people who've escaped the grind. But Buddhism offers a radical and refreshing truth. Freedom isn't found by escaping the world. It's found by changing how we live within it. Faith in Buddhist teachings doesn't ask us to abandon our responsibilities or isolate ourselves from society. It invites us to engage with life more skillfully, more mindfully, and more compassionately. It teaches that true freedom isn't about having no obligations, it's about not being enslaved by them. It's about meeting each moment with clarity, rather than being dragged around by habit, fear, or craving. This kind of freedom begins with awareness. When we trust the practice of mindfulness, we start to notice how much of our life is lived on autopilot. We see how we rush through meals without tasting them, how we scroll through social media without intention, how we speak without really listening. Faith in the present moment helps us pause. It reminds us that life is happening now, not later, not when we finish our to-do list, not when everything is perfect. Now. And when we begin to live in the now, even the busiest day becomes more spacious. Living freely also means letting go of the need to control everything. In a culture that prizes productivity and precision, we're taught to plan, predict, and perfect. But life doesn't always cooperate. Plans fall apart. People disappoint us. Unexpected challenges arise. Faith in impermanence helps us loosen our grip. It teaches us that change is not the enemy, it's the nature of reality. When we stop resisting change, we stop suffering unnecessarily. We learn to adapt, to flow, to respond with grace instead of panic. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent. On the contrary, Buddhist faith encourages us to act, but with wisdom. We still set goals, make decisions, and pursue dreams, but we do so with an understanding that outcomes are not guaranteed, and that our peace doesn't depend on everything going our way. This mindset is liberating. It allows us to work hard without burning out, to care deeply without clinging, and to love fully without fear of loss. Freedom also comes from simplifying. In a world of endless choices and constant stimulation, we often feel overwhelmed. We accumulate things, commitments, and distractions, hoping they'll bring satisfaction. But more often, they bring stress. Faith in the Dharma invites us to ask, what truly matters? What brings real joy? What can I let go of? These questions help us declutter, not just our homes, but our minds. We begin to prioritize presence over perfection, depth over quantity, and meaning over noise. One of the most powerful shifts that Buddhist faith brings is the redefinition of success. In many societies, success is measured by wealth, status, or achievement, but Buddhism offers a different metric: inner peace, ethical living, and compassionate action. When we trust this definition, we stop chasing external validation and start cultivating internal alignment. We stop comparing ourselves to others and start asking, am I living with integrity? Am I contributing to the well-being of others? Am I at peace with myself? This shift is especially important in environments where competition is intense, whether in corporate offices, academic institutions, or social media platforms. Faith in Buddhist values helps us stay grounded. It reminds us that we don't have to win every race, prove every point, or impress every person. We can choose a different path, a path of authenticity, balance, and kindness. And in doing so, we often find that we're not just surviving, we're thriving. Living freely also means embracing rest. In a culture that glorifies hustle, rest is often seen as weakness or laziness. But Buddhism teaches that rest is essential. It's not just physical, it's mental, emotional, and spiritual. Faith in the practice of meditation, for example, helps us create space in the mind. It allows us to step back from the noise, reconnect with our breath, and remember who we are beneath the busyness. This kind of rest doesn't just recharge us, it transforms us. Even in the midst of chaos, Buddhist faith offers tools for freedom. A few minutes of mindful breathing can shift our entire day. A moment of compassion can soften a tense conversation. A single insight can dissolve years of resentment. These small acts, repeated consistently, create a life that feels less reactive and more intentional. They help us move from surviving to truly living. And perhaps most importantly, faith in Buddhism helps us remember that freedom is not a destination, it's a way of being. It's not something we earn after years of effort. It's something we practice, moment by moment. It's found in how we wake up, how we speak, how we listen, how we respond to difficulty. It's found in the choice to be present, to be kind, to be awake. For someone living in a busy city, juggling work, family, and personal growth, this message is both comforting and empowering. You don't have to change your entire life to live freely. You just have to change how you relate to it. You don't have to wait for the weekend, the vacation, or retirement. You can begin now with a breath, a pause, a shift in perspective. Faith in Buddhism doesn't promise a life without problems. It promises a life where problems don't control you. It doesn't offer escape, it offers engagement. And in that engagement, you find freedom not from life, but within it. Why faith in Buddhism transforms lives, as we've explored throughout this journey. Faith in Buddhism isn't just a belief, it's a way of living. It's the quiet strength that helps us face uncertainty, the clarity that guides us through change, and the compassion that connects us to others. In a world that often pulls us in every direction, this kind of faith brings us home to ourselves, to the present moment, and to a deeper sense of peace. Whether you're navigating a busy career, healing from loss, or simply searching for meaning, the teachings of the Buddha offer tools to live with more freedom, balance, and love. And the best part, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to begin with trust, with curiosity, and with an open heart. If this video resonated with you, please take a moment to like, share, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear how Buddhist faith has touched your life, for what questions you're still exploring. And don't forget to subscribe to Life Lessons for more inspiring content on mindfulness, wisdom, and personal growth. Your journey matters. Your presence here matters. And together, we're building a community rooted in truth, compassion, and transformation. See you in the next video.